There's been a lot of chatter recently about the future of Doctor Who, particularly where Disney Plus is concerned. There was a very speculation-heavy article from Deadline, for instance, that took the view that the deal might be in jeopardy. I want to talk about that article, but also the apparent Disney hack and subsequent leak recently that had a few bits of Doctor Who information in, one of which I think may be vital to ensuring any renewal of the distribution deal. Let's talk about it. Welcome to Culture Filter, I am the Fill-In Filter, and we're talking about the future of Doctor Who on Disney+. Now, some background to the deal. It was a groundbreaking deal from the show when it was announced. There was a complete change of the production model of Doctor Who when this happened. Previously, it had all been made in-house by the BBC and then obviously aired on the BBC platforms, BBC One predominantly with repeats on like BBC Three and it being available on iPlayer. And then they would sell it on a case-by-case, country-by-country basis around the world. So in America, it was on BBC America. In Australia, it was on ABC. I don't know what it was on in places like France and Germany, but it was on somewhere in those places as well. Each of those deals completely done independently. This deal changed all of that because now outside of the UK it is only distributed on one platform, Disney+, the world over apart from inside the UK. It is also being made as a co-production with Bad Wolf Studios, which is Sony owned but kind of operates independently from Sony to a degree, and they now make the show on behalf of the BBC. We knew from the outset that this was at least a 2-season deal. There's also a spin-off in pre-production, and it's unknown if this was part of the original deal, a subsequent addition to that deal with Disney negotiated separately, or if Disney actually don't have any involvement in it. I think that one's unlikely, but we will see. Maybe Disney are completely funding the making of that, and it's going to, maybe even BBC if it completely funding the making of that, and it's going to go and be sold probably on a first refusal offer to Disney first, if that was the case. But more likely, Disney are involved in the spin-off. So then we come to Season 3, and whether or not Disney would renew the deal. Let's get to that Deadline article. Unusually for Deadline, which is a very reputable industry press publication, there are outright factual inaccuracies within the piece, most notably the fact that they claim the budget per episode is £10 million per episode. The production team themselves have said it is nowhere near that, so take some things in this article with a grain of salt. The starting point of the article seems to be that the show wasn't a big part of Disney's upfront presentations. This is where they present their upcoming plans for the years to kind of investors, but mainly to advertisers. And the article proposes that that means maybe this is a bad sign for Disney's continued involvement past Season 2. And possibly, you could see why they think that, right? They are showing a lot of their big stuff. Why isn't Doctor Who involved? But it got me thinking and it got me curious. Had Doctor Who been involved in the upfront presentations last year, which happened before the Season 1 premiere, and definitely before Disney would have even thought about making a decision about whether or not they would renew the deal. And no, not in any of the articles I could find about their upfronts in 2023 or their upfront 2023 website, which is still live. There is no mention of Doctor Who on any of it. So why would its absence this year be important to deciphering whether or not they were planning on renewing when it was also absent last year, and that wouldn't have been a factor last year? And the fact that it's absent kind of makes sense, doesn't it? For a few reasons. The upfronts are predominantly for the purpose of selling ad space to advertisers, and Disney Plus does not, currently at least, carry adverts. So it makes sense that the focus on their upfronts is on their channels that do carry adverts. So you'll see a lot of talk about ESPN and ABC at their upfronts. Where they do mention other shows, they're much more likely to focus, and stuff on Disney Plus, they're much more likely to focus on stuff they own. They own Star Wars, they own Marvel, they do not own Doctor Who. There is also the case of the budget, which I'll get back to in a bit, and may be the most important aspect of it all. The Deadline article acknowledges that the UK rating situation is complex, with it debuting on iPlayer before its TV broadcast, which will inevitably have affected the overnight ratings, as those do not count towards it. And that the BBC have pointed out that it is their number one scripted drama for under 35s. But a large part of the ratings part of the article is filled with speculative quotes from unnamed industry insiders. And talk of UK ratings, not worldwide, the Disney Plus ratings are what Disney will make their decision on, not the UK only ratings on BBC. And Disney don't give out that information, which makes it very hard to draw any solid conclusions. The only word from anyone within Disney seems to be one Disney source quoted as saying the ratings are okay, but not stellar. It's very hard to know what that might mean for Disney's decision. It's also hard to know where in the organisation this source may be from, how high up. And okay is okay. There's a tendency amongst some audiences and commentators to paint everything that isn't a roaring rating success as a failure, but that completely ignores the middle ground. In a normal, traditional TV landscape, okay ratings would be enough to get something renewed usually, especially something that's such a large merchandising money earner as Doctor Who. But streamers have been brutal in the past. Even Disney have brutally cancelled shows when it looked like they were doing okay. Look at the Willow TV series. Not only did they not renew it for a season 2, they completely removed it from their streaming service, and now it's not available to find anywhere legally. So I don't want to discount the possibility that they might be equally brutal with Doctor Who. It's a possibility. So what might save it at Disney? Well, let's talk about the recent leak. There wasn't a lot of information about Doctor Who, just kind of 3 bits really. That would be that the Christmas special will be released on Christmas Day.
I am shocked! Shocked! Well, not that shocked.
That Season 2, Episode 1 would be released on the 28th of March 2025, which I think is a good thing for the ratings, but we can talk about that if I do a video on the UK ratings once we know them all, because we're still waiting on some 28-day figures. And the most relevant bit of information from this leak, the fact that I think might mean that Disney do renew their deal. That Disney consider Doctor Who a low-budget series. That seems odd to British fans like me, because even though the budget isn't the 10 million an episode that Deadline article suggests it is, inevitably this is the most money the show has ever had per episode. So by our standards, it is a high-budget show. But remember, Disney is used to dealing with Marvel and Star Wars shows whose budgets probably dwarf Doctor Who's quite significantly. And that's the thing that might save the deal with Disney. If they consider it a low-budget series, it's easier for them to justify renewing the deal on okay ratings, because from their perspective, it doesn't cost much to do it. And they are not even funding the whole of the series. They are putting in some money. Let's be realistic though. What might happen is they might use the opportunity to renegotiate a better deal for them, which might mean the show gets less money, probably still more than it had before the deal, but less than now maybe, and maybe they would negotiate more editorial control. Much like the Deadline article, this is all speculation at this point, and until we get any firm info or announcements, the truth is we just don't know. So when might some announcements come? Given when Season 3 would need to go into production to get it out for a spring, early summer 2026, I'd be worried probably if we haven't had it confirmed by the end of the year. But we'll see. So what if Disney do pull out after Season 2? What happens then? The show itself is still one of the biggest moneymakers for the BBC. Its biggest IPs are Top Gear, Strictly Come Dancing, and Doctor Who. And Top Gear is currently off the air not because of any ratings reasons, but because of health and safety issues around how the show is made. So while there was that big accident with Freddie Flintoff fairly recently that has meant that they have paused production on that show. So that brand is kind of on the shelf for a while, but I'm pretty sure they don't want it to be on the shelf forever because it is one of their biggest money makers. So they'll want to get that back into production once they've had a chance to cool off on the PR of the bad PR from the accident and to retool it in some way to make it more safe. Strictly has its own drama going on at the moment, although it is still in production from all accounts. I don't believe it has been cancelled or put on hold at this point, but it has its own certain issues around it with some controversy about training methods, I believe. So we'll see what happens with Strictly, but that leaves Doctor Who as one of their biggest money earners, so it's unlikely they're going to cancel the show at this point, especially with a spin-off already in the works. It'd be really weird if they released season 2, then a spin-off, without a season 3 coming. So if Disney did pull out, they would likely seek a deal with a different streamer, and maybe even take it back in-house to produce on a slightly lower budget. But we're not at that point. The only thing the BBC have said in response is Season 2 is currently in production and the spin-offs are underway, so it's too early for us to be commenting on any future deals, and anything else is just speculation. And that's important to remember. However many articles you read or videos like this you watch, we are all just speculating. Nothing is probably even decided yet. But my main speculation, if I have to have one, is that Disney, considering this a low-budget series, may be its saving grace for a deal renewal. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. One thing's for certain, we're still getting lots of expanded universe stories in between in books and comics and stuff, so if you want to know where they might fit into the 15th Doctor's timeline, click on the video on screen now.